couple of slides. So thank you, Chair Frederick, Vice Chair Weber, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Wendy Gibson. I represent the K through 12 education and the State School Fund with the Legislative Fiscal Office. I will go super fast. I think the question was, could we please just overview, what are we even talking about? What is this process? What does it look like? And what would result? So this is all in response to ballot measure 1, which is part of the Constitution that requires that the Legislative Assembly appropriate a sum of money sufficient to ensure that the state's education, public education meets quality goals. So that is part of the Constitution. It requires that you determine it's either sufficient and or provide a report explaining the insufficiency. Two things happen as a result of statute that supports that constitutional. We have in the even number years, in August, the Quality Education Commission publishes the Quality Education Model Report. That model report determines the cost of a total quality education in the state of Oregon. The second thing that happens by statute is that in November, after the biennium has closed and the legislative adopted budget has been set, that the Joint Public Education Appropriation Committee meets, reviews the amount of money that was appropriated, and compares that to what was stated for a quality number in the Quality Education Commission's report and determines that sufficiency. Very important. This has nothing to do with setting the budget. The budget is a completely separate process. This is about determining whether or not the budget was set appropriately. This particular biennium, the report came out, said 13.5 billion was the number. It was 25 billion overall, but 13.5 is what the state should be paying. The finding was that the state's actually paying 13.6 billion, so it did meet the quality education model number. There's also an additional 1.4 billion that is also paid, not accounted for here, in supports for the K through 12 and early learning system. So the problem is that the current model, the way it is, it does not account for the funding that was brought in regards to the Student Success Act. And so you can see in here, we have the quality education model in blue, this line, the start of the Student Success Act funding, which is a corporate activity tax, and you see it in bold gold here starting to build up to meet this number. Over time, and in this biennium alone, you can see that 2.3 billion has been infused into the education system. So if we're meeting the quality education amount right now, this is the same report that you would get next biennium as well.
If you pull the mic over there, please. Thank you.
Yes. Chair Frederick, Vice Chair Weber, members of the committee, Monica Cox, senior research analyst with LPRO. And I'll just go quickly through the professional judgment panel methodology evaluation that AIR did against our current QEM. So there are 6 components to the, I have slides. This is based off of my, the presentation I did to JPEA back in October. Those slides, I believe, are posted on OLIS, but I'm just going to quickly go through sort of a summary of that summary. So 6 components to a professional judgment panel process according to best practice. The first is defining education goals is a critical component of that. And best practice calls for using multiple goals to be able to capture a comprehensive education system, preferably based on our actual published or articulated goals in the state, such as our accountability metrics, standards, et cetera. The current QEM currently only uses 1 goal, and that's a 90% graduation rate to estimate the cost of education. So the evaluators recommend integrating more goals into our model. The second component is having sufficient prototype schools to represent the diversity of student needs and geographic experiences that drive the cost of education across the state. The current QEM only has 3 prototype schools based on grade levels, so an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, and they're all based on the average of those school levels. So the recommendation from the evaluators is to substantially increase the number of prototype schools to reflect the geographic differences and student needs across the state. The third is recruiting panelists. We know that that's a big part of the bill. So these are the folks who actually identify the resources that are needed in the classrooms, in the school buildings, at the district level. That will form the basis of the cost estimate. And that there should be, the panel should consist of practicing educators representing a variety of roles, and that there should be multiple panels actually costing out or identifying resources per prototype school, just as sort of a validation process. Our current QEM is really just the one panel. It's the QEC. Historically, not all of those members have been practicing educators. And additionally, multiple panels aren't used to validate the inputs that go into the model. So the recommendation is to substantially expand the number of panels and the panelists. The fourth is the process of identifying resources. This is where research expertise and the process and the methods really comes in, because it does require expert facilitation and facilitator familiarity with the method itself, the professional judgment model approach, as well as the research expertise. They need to come in and provide a very robust set of tools for the panelists to be able to use to identify those resources. They also bring in research and evidence and data from the state to inform their process. So that currently is not what's happening under the current QEM. So the recommendation is to improve that process. And then the final two are establishing prices and then finally estimating the costs. The evaluators did find that we did a really good job in terms of meeting the best practice for determining prices. We use our actual expenditure data in the state. So we're not pulling from national averages. We're not trying to guess based on what national prices are. It's best practice to use what it costs us in the state, and that is what we use. So continue doing that is their recommendation. And then finally, the estimating costs. This is where we get into being able to understand how costs vary in different school settings based on different school needs. So there needs to be a process of taking all of those inputs by the different prototype schools and coming up with some data that tells you for every % increase in students experiencing poverty in a school district, how much more money is that school district going to need? So that needs to be a part of the process. It's based on that variety of prototype schools. And then finally, the other piece is to take all of that data, run it through some statistical analysis, and to come up with actual costs for each school district in the state. And then using those numbers, aggregating up to come up with the statewide total cost. So every school, you could actually see what are the inputs that go into these schools based on their profiles, and how much do we predict they're going to need per student. We don't currently do that, so it's a recommendation.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm going to move along with several other things here at this particular point, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you.